Never thought I would be making a video like this, but here we are. A couple of months ago, I made a video about how Heaven Official's Blessings manhwa mischaracterizes Xie Lian and Hua Cheng by removing important scenes and basically making them a stereotypical straight couple. In it, I briefly mentioned that Xie Lian's design in the manhwa is fine, maybe a bit too feminine, but Hua Cheng, on the other hand, is way too wide. His bicep is the same size as his head, and these designs only add to the mischaracterization of the characters. And some people were very angry, saying that Xie Lian should look like a girl and that Hua Cheng should be a big buff guy. One guy called me a stupid American, and I do not know how to feel about it. I am not even American. English is my second language. I guess I'll take it as a compliment for how well I speak in English. So, let's set the record straight. How are Hua Cheng and Xie Lian described in the books, and discuss why people care so much about it. Let's start with Hua Cheng, since he is more or less clearly described. In the book, his true form is that of a youth around 18 or 19 years old, and he is described as being tall, he is 1 meter 90 centimeters, and slender. Everything about this man is slender. His legs are long and slender, his fingers are slender, he himself is slender. To quote, just like how the blade was slender and long, the person himself was also slender and tall. This is the definition of slender, gracefully thin. The manhwa version of Hua Cheng is as slender as Guts' sword, which is not at all. In his younger Sunlang form, he is 16 or 17. We don't get a good description of his appearance. Xie Lian only says how handsome he is, but pretty much all adaptations agree to portray him as a youthful teen, who isn't buff. Well, his Sunlang and true forms are basically identical. Only difference being that he is slightly older and taller in his true form. There is no mention that he is more buff in his true form. As we can see in the book, it is clearly stated that Hua Cheng isn't buff, but rather slender. So, why do so many people say that he is buff? There is one scene where it talks about Hua Cheng's muscles. It's the infamous coffin scene. Even though Hua Cheng had the appearance of a young man, it was only after being tumbled about like this that Xie Lian realized Hua Cheng was solid and hard from top to bottom. Many use the scene to say that Hua Cheng is buff, but this scene actually proves the opposite. Xie Lian, just by looking at Hua Cheng, couldn't tell that he was muscular. It is a surprise for him that Hua Cheng is actually so firm. If Xie Lian saw someone like this, then I do not think he would have been surprised. And remember, at this point, Xie Lian has already seen Hua Cheng shirtless. He didn't see anything properly because of reasons, but still. And you know what? The tgcf manhwa artist used to draw Hua Cheng as slender. We can see a bit of it in the actual manhwa. We don't see a full image of Hua Cheng at this point, but it is obvious that he is thinner here. The biggest difference is in her fan art. Let me make this clear. When making fan art, people can draw whatever and however they want. I am not here to critique people's fan art. But with Star Amber, it's clear how her interpretation of Hua Cheng changed. This is her earlier works. The difference is obvious. In the beginning, Hua Cheng was tall and slender, just like it is described in the book. But at some point, he became wide. These two drawings are a good example. Like, you see it, right? So, in the book, Hua Cheng is handsome, tall, and slender. Just looking at him, you can't tell that he is muscular. But he actually is very firm. The word that comes to mind when I think of Hua Cheng is elegant. Next is Xie Lian. The problem with Xie Lian is that the book doesn't really describe his build. He is 1 meter 78 centimeters tall, so 12 centimeters shorter than Hua Cheng. And he has black hair. Yeah, in the book he has black hair. The donghua changed it to brown. Since there isn't a clear description, I'll just jump to what people claimed in the comments. Basically, a few people claimed that Xie Lian looks like a girl because he dressed like a bride and people fell for it. To this I say, did you read that part properly? It's clearly stated that Xie Lian isn't fooling anyone. No matter who looked, they could tell with one glance that this was a handsome man with gentle brows. A perfectly good, handsome man wearing a woman's wedding dress. It is explicitly stated that he looks like a man. They even start thinking of other solutions to catch a ghost groom because Xie Lian looks nothing like a woman. But I just said that Xie Lian did pass as a bride, so what gives? Well, you can thank Xiao Ying and her godlike makeup skills. Her makeup skills were so good that it made Function and Muqing question their very existence. So, what we know so far is that Xie Lian is a very handsome, good-looking man, but without a miracle worker like Xiao Ying, there is no way in hell he is passing for a woman. But that's his face. What about his body? Some people claim that he must look like a dainty girl who has never lifted a finger in her life, because women's clothes fit him and he fooled a bunch of cultivators by showing his bare back. Again, did you read those scenes properly? That dress absolutely did not fit Xie Lian. He took one step and it ripped. It stated that a woman's form was really much daintier. He was severely restricted in raising his arms and lifting his feet. Only the waist was surprisingly just fine. Fans of Xie Lian's waist? Rejoice, I guess. It's only thanks to the miracle worker Xiao Ying and her sewing skills that the dress finally fit. That girl deserved so much better. I mean, in what universe is that considered ugly? Back to the topic. In the scene with the cultivators, Xie Lian wasn't half naked like some people claim. He specifically grabbed female robes, basically imagine a dress, and he lowered one side, exposing his shoulder and part of his back. So it looked like a woman was in the middle of taking off her dress. Basically, the cultivators went into a changing room and saw someone with long black hair taking off their dress. And Xie Lian even put on an act, trembling and whimpering. Let me ask you, if this happened to you, would your first reaction be to examine the exposed shoulder and back to see if it's really a woman, or just slam the door shut and yell, "I'm sorry"? It's even stated that although Xie Lian was a man and his shoulders were wider than the average woman's, he only pulled down half of his robe to expose the best angle, creating the perfect effect, implying that if his back was fully exposed, then people would be able to tell instantly that he was a man and not a woman. Finally, let's talk muscles. Again, Xie Lian is a martial god. He is a sword nerd who dedicated his whole life to martial arts. So, why do people claim that he doesn't have any muscles? In the novel, it's stated that while his body didn't look that tough, his physical strength was quite formidable. Not that tough doesn't equal not tough at all. And look at the context of that claim. It says that only a gigantic creature could yank him over. Appropriately tough-looking would look like this in the scenario. Xie Lian can easily break boulders over his chest, but just looking at him, people can't tell that. Sounds a lot like Hua Cheng's description if you ask me. So, Xie Lian definitely isn't buff, just like Hua Cheng definitely isn't buff. But we've established that Hua Cheng does have muscles. What makes people think that Xie Lian doesn't? We go back to the cultivator scene. Some claim that if Xie Lian had muscles, that the cultivators would have known that he is a man. You do know that women also have muscles, right? You're telling me that if you walked in on women like Mirko, Mikasa, Rita, Sarah Connor changing, then you wouldn't be able to tell that that's a woman and would immediately assume that that's a man? And women in tgcf world did fight. Xuanji was a general. There's no reason for women with muscles to be an oddity there. And again, Xie Lian planned that interaction perfectly. The cultivators didn't have the opportunity to examine everything carefully. Xie Lian himself states that since he is a martial god, he is very heavy. Take that statement with a grain of salt since he was talking to Hua Cheng, but he does acknowledge that he has a body of a martial god. So, why does all of this matter, and why do people care? When asked why people like Danmei, one of the most common answers is that there is equality. There are no stereotypical gender roles, so both members are on even footing. That is the claim at least. From what I've seen, people tend to force even stricter gender roles on Danmei couples than they do on straight ones. The only difference is that the woman character is called bottom and the man character is top, and that equality vanishes into thin air. Some people say that that is just the way it is in BL. That's the same as saying women belong in the kitchen and must obey the man, because that's just how straight couples work. In tgcf, Hua Cheng and Xie Lian are portrayed as equals. That includes their looks. So why try to twist the narrative and force stereotypical gender roles on them? I understand being sick of male characters having cookie-cutter bodies. Like, some of these are so extra, they're funny. The head doesn't match the body whatsoever. The muscles portrayed in movies are often not functional muscles. The actors have to be severely dehydrated to achieve that look. I am all for having strong characters that don't have that kind of muscles and rather have functional muscles. You don't have to look strong in the traditional way to actually be strong. But why do people only apply this logic to Xie Lian? Some claim that just because Xie Lian trained his entire life, is super strong, and fought in the army, doesn't mean that he has to have muscles. But when the talk turns to Hua Cheng, then it sounds something like this. He is super strong, he trained hard, he was in the army, he has to have muscles. It would be illogical for him not to have them. Why the double standards? It seems that some people like traditional couples, but prefer if both of them were men. Then they can still project themselves onto the bottom character and ogle at the hot top character. Everyone is free to interpret characters they like however they want. Do whatever you want in fanfics and fanart. I myself prefer Xie Lian with brown hair instead of the canonical black. But when you start claiming that the canon is different from what it actually is, then there is a problem. Anyways, maybe I missed some details on how Xie Lian and Hua Cheng look. If you have something to add, then please do so in the comments. Next video should be a bit more serious. Until then, don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye!